Welcome back to the Nurburgring. After 7 long years, Formula One is back at the Green Hill. Except we're not racing at the big Nordschleife. We are going back to the GP layout. And boy, what a track it is. It may not be the full circuit. It may not be the beautiful Nordschleife with its over 100 corners and all the tight and twisty ones. But this one is nothing short of a gem. Welcome back, folks, to Pits To Podium. As always, it is myself, Soumil Arora here. And what a man I'm joined by. Kunal Shah is here with me, and for those who don't know, Kunal was once a promising racing driver competing internationally. He was the marketing head of Force India, and he's now heading the content side at Viasat Network in Norway for the motorsports department. So we've got someone who knows a lot about the sport right here, and Kunal, there's so much to look out for this weekend. We've got a prediction competition, we've got temperatures to look out for, a few young drivers coming onto the scene. Promises to be an amazing weekend, doesn't it?
It does, and thanks very much for that introduction, Soumil. It's taken me a bit of a surprise, but thank you. It's great to be sharing airtime with you, given your love for motorsport and all the commentating duties you do yourself.
Thank you.
And yes, Nurbugring is back. 7 years, we've had to wait for it. And, if someone ever asks me what were the positives of the COVID-19 pandemic, I would say circuits like Mugello, circuits like Nurburgring, making it back to the calendar, however brief their appearance may be.
It is a proper gem of a circuit. The first time that Formula One ever came to this circuit, the GP layout, that is 1984. And interestingly enough, the first race to be held at the GP layout was a touring car race in Mercedes. Now, all the Formula One drivers of the time were racing in that. And there was one certain young Brazilian driver who goes by the name of Ayrton Senna, who beat Niki Lauda and Alain Prost clean. Now, this was at a time when Senna was racing for Tolman. This was probably the first inkling that we got of the great driver to expect. But lots of more memories from this circuit as well. We've got Kimi Raikkonen's infamous blowout from 2005. The 1999 European Grand Prix here as well. Quite a few iconic moments. But on the whole, this circuit is a proper driver delight, isn't it, Kunal? Lots of fun corners, lots of tricky sections. I think just like you mentioned, the drivers will be coming out of every single lap and thinking, wow, man, this is properly fun. Unlike what we had the last week, but okay, stuff happens. Let's call it that way.
I'm going to add to some of those memories you said. I think 2007 was when we had the famous Winkelhock moment, which Kevin Magnussen and Romain Grosjean repeated this season. So, a good memory of that as well. But, great circuit, great corners, mixed weather. Like always, every time we've approached the Nürburgring, everyone's talked about the weather. Let's hope the weather gods don't disappoint us, We really are hoping that all 5 tire compounds are used this weekend. And I think if that happens, we should be in for some fun this weekend, Soumil. That's the gut feeling that I get.
Absolutely. It is a crazy good circuit. We see so many epic corners. Turn 1, the descending downhill right-hand hairpin. I don't know about you, but I always get my braking wrong for that corner on the simulator. It is properly hard. Now, these drivers haven't really driven at the Nürburgring for quite a while. In fact, only a few drivers on the grid today have proper race experience in a Formula One car here. But of course, simulations help out with quite a few things, and teams will be working on that. But last week, Kunal, when the Nürburgring 24 was around, the weather was extreme. We saw torrential rain. We saw extreme cold. In fact, the race had to be halted and red flagged for quite a while because of the weather. Now, we don't quite expect rain this weekend, but the temperatures are pretty darn low.
Yeah, this is the longest or the latest in October that, Formula One's gone racing in Europe. It's pretty much end of autumn and, winter's just around the corner. Like we saw during the track walk, drivers were out in gloves already and, they had all the heat equipment they needed. But more than anything else, all eyes will be on the tires and how, the teams and drivers are able to sort of get them up to the right operating window, because it's going to be the single most, important focus that teams will have come free practice sessions, because, they very seldom do we see Formula One cars racing in such cold weather. And I think you mentioned only a few drivers have, driven here before. The number is, I think, 7 drivers who've driven here in a Formula One car before.
Hmm.
And several others have probably driven in junior categories, but nobody would have probably raced in such cold conditions. So, we'll be sitting at home, warming our backsides on the sofa, watching them race. But I'm pretty sure they're going to be, having a good time in the cold weather out there.
It will be some weekend, won't it? Cold weather, high downforce. I mean, if you come to think of it, it might just be looking like a proper Mercedes steamroll show again. And then it's also their home weekend. Of course, we have the Mercedes-Benz Arena section. I think we're on turns 2 to 4. I hate that section on the simulator. But again, it's quite a fun place to drive on when you're in a Formula One car. So things are looking good. But I had a question about the weather, Kunal. Track temperatures are expected to be properly low. Again, very, very low weathers. I think around 3 degrees Celsius to 8 or 9 or max to max 11. So things are going to be hard for all the drivers. Well, how does this impact the tire strategies? And does it mean that the undercut or the overcut or something else can work better than the other here this weekend?
You know, Pirelli is bringing their medium range compounds, I would say. They're getting C2, C3, C4. So I'm sure, running C3 and C4 will be probably easier, but C2 may be a little tougher to sort of get into the right operating window. And we might even see drivers doing or needing 2 laps to warm up their tires before going out for, a hot lap in qualifying. And come race day, again, it's going to be about how cold or how grippy your tires may or may not be once you exit the pits and you're on your out lap. So it's all out for the play, I would say, Soumil. And we might just thank the weather for bringing in a second, fantastic racing weekend for us, especially after, what we've seen at Sochi just, a fortnight ago.
Exactly. Now, I had a question about the top teams, Kunal, because when we went to Silverstone, the hot weather rather, I should say, and the curbing was a problem for Mercedes. A couple of seasons ago, if you remember, warming up our tires for them was the major Achilles heel. It's going to be cold. We saw Red Bull doing a stellar job when the conditions were hot. Can we see something on the same lines here this weekend? I mean, it's a completely different condition, of course, but still, we saw Mercedes have a few gremlins with tire warming a few seasons ago, didn't we?
Yes, we did. And, frankly, Pirelli have played it a little bit safer, I would say, because these compounds that they brought to 7 out of the 10 races in 2020. So the teams already have a fair bit of experience and understanding of these tires. So it might, after all, just be that the teams get on top of their tires and, what to expect pretty quickly. And eventually it's just going to be down to, does mixed weather come into play? Because, rain threatens to come. And like Nityanand, one of our colleagues, on the Pits to Podium show was saying that, every time rain has threatened to come, it has seldom come. So
Yeah.
we should probably just start breaking into a rain dance, hoping that, we have one of those epic races that Nurburgring has always, given us.
Absolutely. And before we go ahead, speaking of Nityanan reminded me, he's at the forefront, along with Sundaram, another one of our colleagues here at Pitch the Podium, of our prediction competition. If you're listening right now, pause the podcast, pause the video, whatever it is. We're going to have a 24-hour prediction competition going on. That is from 24 hours before qualifying begins to an hour before it ends, where you can predict the top three winners, the top three podium finishers, that is the fastest lap and the best of the rest team. You've got to take part. The prizes are huge. We've got more links and more information in the description. Trust me, you're going to have a lot of fun. Back to the Nurburgring then, once again. Mercedes are well and truly the dominant team right here. We are seeing them dominate every single race. Bottas has got a win under his belt. This could be a place where he actually turns the odds over Hamilton, but Hamilton has driven here before. Yeah, you can say it's not a major factor in comparison to what it used to be previously, but still, you kind of get a feeling that when Lewis comes back to circuits like this one, he just is in the zone.
He is in the zone, but here's a statistic which we were digging up that I think just 3 out of 18 races at Nürburgring have been won from pole position. So if Lewis Hamilton gets pole, I'm sure he'll want to sort of break the statistic. He'd love to hammer the statistic down. When it comes to Bottas, and if he doesn't get pole position, he might just be that, hey, the statistics are in my favor for Sunday. So maybe this just helps, some of our listeners to understand what to put for the predictions in our Grand Prix prediction league, Soumil.
Exactly. Sadly, Lewis won't be able to have a nice hot sausage before going out in the cold weather because he's vegan, of course. That's personal choices, but he won't be able to have that sausage. It's something that you need to have in Germany. It's beautiful. In case you go there.
We will see Bottas and his coffee maker
Yes,
reappearance.
yes. And Valtteri, if you're watching, don't fist bump anyone while you're holding your coffee. Please do not. You could have a dirty race suit. Your inner OCD will come into perspective. Yeah, lots of things to consider. But coming back to the racing side, okay. Just before we go ahead, Mercedes have had one of their team members testing positive for the virus. So full strength to them. Hopefully they get well soon. And we have to move down to Red Bull because the big news with them has been that Honda have pulled out. Now, it must be coming for a while. Of course, you won't let your partners down so easily. Honda might have given an intimation to Christian Horner and Helmut Marko quite a few months prior that we're going to leave the sport because it doesn't seem relevant to us anymore. If they hadn't, of course, there would be a big political war and they'd be suing each other and whatnot. But thankfully, it's not that way. So what's next, Kunal? What's next on an immediate basis at the Nurburgring? And does this mean that Honda are going to eke out this support a little bit? Are they just going to go a little bit conservative and not put the efforts needed? Or are they just going to go full blow bang before they pull out of the sport?
You know, Honda have claimed that they are bringing a completely new power unit to 2021 with the hope that they can win the world title with Red Bull and Max Verstappen and then, bow out on a high. So one would hope that they actually do that because that's good for Formula One. Otherwise, I pretty much see Mercedes and maybe Lewis Hamilton winning their 8th title in 2021. That's the long and short of it. But, having said that, it's understandable given, Honda's corporate objectives have changed in time. And they've chosen to go a different path. Yes, a lot of people are upset that Honda has sort of always committed and left and committed and left and so on. But, if that's what suits them, then that's what suits their style. And, we've just got to accept it, much like Red Bull would have accepted it several weeks, maybe even months ago. And then see what solution Red Bull actually works on for themselves. And, we've been reading that they're going to try and buy the Honda IP and then work on the power unit themselves and so on. And frankly, it sounds like a very bold move.
Yeah.
It sounds like that move is going to cost them a lot of time, effort, and money. And it's not as easy to go building a hybrid turbo power unit as it is to probably build, a naturally aspirated engine that, we've seen used in Formula One before. And let's remember, if works teams like Renault, Ferrari, and Honda have taken so many years to sort of get it right, who's to say that Red Bull may take as long or even longer? And if that happens, then we might just see Red Bull being relegated to the midfield. So lots of considerations out there, Soumil.
Just ask Honda. Just ask Honda how hard it is to actually nail down a good power unit. They've still not come up with a championship winning one after so many years of trying. So it's not easy by any means whatsoever. But it raises a question in my mind about Max Verstappen. It's been a long time since Verstappen has made his debut in the sport. It's been a long time since he actually won his first race. I think by this point, everyone does consider him a major championship contender. I'll be honest, no disrespect to Honda. I don't think 2021 is going to be their year. Mercedes are still on the rise and the gap is too big to close up with the power unit even in 1 year. So, I don't think it's going to happen. Then Red Bull have to start afresh for 22. Who knows how long it'll take? Maybe 23, maybe 24. That raises a big, big doubt in my mind about Max Verstappen, which I think is going to be a big half-an-hour discussion on its own for some other day. Let's leave that aside. Let's actually come back down to the midfield where there are two new exciting drivers on the horizon, and this is something that gets me just about as excited as the circuit itself. One of them is a Schumacher. Now, that's been raised in the headlines, but don't forget the other driver too. Callum Ilott being promoted into Formula One, not for driving for a team full-time. That could happen next year, but he's going to be driving an FP1 for Haas. That sounds like good stuff, right? So this is the kind of news that makes you feel good at the end of the day.
It does. And, it's going to be an interesting weekend because we're going to have two new drivers make their debut in Formula One in FP1. And then, of course, Mick Schumacher at the German Grand Prix with a Sauber all of these things will always make news. Even more so, he's going to drive through the Schumacher curve in Sector 2 and the likes. But it's also going to be a Grand Prix weekend where Kimi Raikkonen is going to end up having his 323rd Formula One start. So while people are going to make their debut, Raikkonen is going to go and increase the record by at least one more race come this weekend.
It's just a hobby for him. He doesn't really care much about it. But no, 323 is a jaw-dropping number. He's overtaken Rubens Barrichello. When you come to think of it, Rubens Barrichello has been around in the sport for quite a while. Hats off to Kimi, but I don't think he's going to care that much because Kimi, why not in the end? But on the bigger picture, while we see debuts coming in, while we see Kimi Raikkonen breaking records, there's going to be a lot to play for in terms of the midfield battles. Now, Nurburgring, in case you're new to Formula One, in case you haven't seen much of the track, and you're welcome to search more about it, it's a proper gym. It's mostly a mid to high downforce kind of track. You've got quite a few fun ones. I think in the first sector, you need that downforce for the especially slow arena section. Then in the middle sector, you need that fast-paced thing, so you need a lot more downforce for that too. Essentially, from the way things are going, I don't think it's going to be a good weekend for Renault. But that said, one man's loss is another man's gain, and Racing Point and McLaren could be in for a big weekend here.
Yes, I would put my money on Racing Point for a really big weekend. I would, in fact, even put my money on Checo Perez. He's finally getting the upgraded RP20, okay? And like we all know, after Lewis Hamilton, he's been the only driver to have scored points in all the races he's competed in 2020. So, and he's out to prove a point. He's still advertising his services. Not that they need any advertisement, but he's still advertising them for 2021. So he's, of course, going to want to keep proving a point that he's still the better driver than Lance, which probably no one needs to keep proving, I would say. Yeah. Lance has had 2 DNFs, back to back. So he'd want to sort of showcase his potential. But I also feel Renault have suddenly found something in their package that they've unlocked where we might just still see them, in the fight for things. Because Daniel Ricciardo has had, I think, 4 top 6 finishes, which is fantastic for Renault, fantastic for Daniel. And then you mentioned McLaren, they had their first non-scoring race at Sochi. So they would want to get back into the points. And then, Soumil, there's one more team we should add in the midfield, and that's Ferrari. And actually, believe it or not, Ferrari are on a race result. Their 2 best race results on the trot. So, given how 2020 is going, I'm pretty excited to see what the midfield is going to be like.
It's hard not to crack up at this. I don't know, because it's just something with the name Ferrari that's synonymous with winning. And by 2020 standards, they are doing quite a decent job in the last couple of races. But I just can't help be either too sad or too laughed up, or to take this in a more funny way. I think that's the way to put it forward. But I don't know. I'm not really. Let's see what happens with them. Sebastian Vettel looks rejuvenated. If you've heard the recent Beyond the Grid podcast, which is a gem, mind you, you would know that he feels still just about as fresh. Sadly, things are not going his way, but let's hope for the best at his home race at the Eifel Grand Prix this time out. I'm just desperately hoping for Vettel to come back with a bang this time out, because it's such a heartwarming character, and coming back to Germany for another race.
As well.
Exactly, home race for him as well. It's just desperately hope for the best for him. But what are your thoughts on AlphaTauri this time, Kunal? They've been on a roller coaster of sorts. We saw them have a lot of pace in the mid part of the season, say around Silverstone, Spain, Italy, and then at Mugello, it all just went away.
It did, and then Danny Kivat, of course, got really good points for himself at Russia. I still expect them to be slightly or just outside of the points this weekend. But again, who knows? They have, like you said, a roller coaster ride, and if they experience one of those highs that they've had with Pierre Gasly, you never know if he takes a couple of points away this weekend as well.
Absolutely. Should be quite a fun thing. But Kunal, if you just had to pick out one major tip for our prediction competition for all our viewers, what would that be? And after that, of course, I have to ask you, what's your favorite thing about the circuit?
Okay, so I'm going to firstly go with my favorite thing about the circuit, which we're going to hear all the drivers really rave about, which is the turns 8 and 9. Okay. Now,
Yes.
usually they've been high speed corners, on the circuit, or one of the only high speed corners section. But they're predicting that it's going to be flat out in this, in this modern era of Formula One cars. So I'm pretty excited to see how it looks, because we all saw how beautiful it looked in Mugello when
Yeah.
cars were literally just flowing through the corners. And one more race where we get to see that, because it's one of those old school circuits we're going back to. But coming to predictions, I'm hoping Valtteri Bottas gets a win on merit this weekend. If he qualifies in P2, the statistics are in his favor to try and go score a win, I would say.
And what about the best of the rest team? Racing Point, we mentioned they have a big shot, but it isn't all over with McLaren, is it?
It isn't, maybe this is where my heart speaks before the head, but I would probably pick Racing Point and Checo Perez to sort of get the best of the rest, Soumil.
And at last, what about the fastest lap? Cold conditions, it's going to be greasy perhaps over there. Who's going to get the edge? Who do you back to get the big one? And I know the fastest lap has been the most unpredictable one so far in the prediction
Yeah,
competition.
I think it's going to be the Mercedes driver who's either second, or the driver who finishes third, Soumil. So it
Yeah.
could be Max Verstappen, or maybe even Checo Perez if he's able to get into third. But, before we have to go off, you need to share your predictions as well.
Now that's a tricky one. I've always been pretty standard at this. Call me a bit of a dull person, but I've always had the same prediction, which I'm going to keep on continuing. It's going to be Hamilton, Bottas, Verstappen. The fastest lap has to go to Max Verstappen, because I don't think Bottas will be that far off so that he gets a free pit stop. So I think Verstappen's is going to get free rubber, or if not him, perhaps just Alex Albon, because why not? and the best of the rest team, I think I'm going to follow suit. I'm going to go for Racing Point and Checo Perez this time out. But should be a fun weekend all around. I can't wait to see how things go. I think the first time for many, many, many weeks that I'm genuinely upbeat for a Formula One weekend. So can't wait to see how that plays out. But don't forget to play the prediction competition, folks. We hope you enjoyed this particular one. If you did, thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, to share this video with your fellow Formula One enthusiasts, and to subscribe to Pits to Podium and to the Inside Line Formula One podcast. Once again, Kunal, thank you so much for being a part, and we shall see all of you on Sunday.
Likewise, Soumil, thanks for joining me on the show one more time, and see you guys. Let's hope for a fantastic Formula One weekend.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.